Joseph, welcome. Good morning. Happy Thanksgiving if they celebrate that in Brazil.
They don't, but I do wherever I am. A Jewish tradition, the rabbinic sages teach that even at the end of time, the eschaton, when the Messiah comes, we're still waiting. You already have the engagement, but there
We're kind
will
of
be a
we're
time.
kind of waiting still too, though. So
Yeah, okay. All sacrifices, everything that's written about in the Hebrew Bible, will be abrogated. None will require our attention except one, the Hoda'ah, the thanksgiving sacrifice.
Hmm.
I think it's a profound lesson that even when everything is perfect, which it will be when the Messiah comes again, um, we have to say thank you. So I've tried to teach my children, and as often as I can, my grandchildren, saying thank you, being grateful is and should not be located on one day uh, in a strange supranational American. Let's see if we can get ahead of the big winter sales. I am grateful for this relationship,
me too.
grateful for a new opportunity to find and encourage serious Jewish Christian dialogue. Uh, I'm grateful this morning that there has been an agreement that will permit 50 human beings out of a horrific circumstance of being kidnapped and kept imprisoned by Hamas. Grateful that there will be 4 or 5 days of no longer bombing an innocent civilian community, which has in some ways been kidnapped by Hamas. I'm grateful.
That's good. I'm glad. That say, I mean, I don't want to ruin the good news of those hostages being free, but I was thinking this past week about why there has not been global demonstrations demanding that Hamas free the hostages.
I wonder that too. And I wonder in the midst of every single experience that requires hundreds of thousands, millions globally to demand a ceasefire, there is at least not a moment of, and free the hostages. I don't understand how quickly the narrative has changed from the mass murder and kidnapping initiated by Hamas, and that this conflict was initiated by, framed by, calculated by Hamas. The devastation in Gaza, as you and I have talked about previously, I have, I won't and can't understand, justify, explain. These innocents are being destroyed, and I take responsibility emotionally, theologically, as a Jew. They are dying because of the Israeli military. The intent is to dismantle, destroy, and forever free the area of Hamas. I wish somehow we could insert the idiom Hamas in more of the discourse.
Mm-hmm. And and to that end, or on that topic, rather, you sent me 3 articles yesterday. Two are about the kind of the anti-Semitic tone on campuses, and one is about archaeologists um, struggling to help locate remains from October 7th. And I'd like you to speak to both of those, and I'll let you just choose which path you want to take first.
In Israel, when there's a terror attack, there's a group of individuals, ultra Orthodox Jews, who spend a considerable amount of time attempting to retrieve every single bit of, as it were, human remains. In the years of both intifadas, when terrorism chose the human body as a murder weapon, I hate using the word suicide, Jason, because both of us pastorally have to deal with those whose death comes by way of the cruelty of suicide. So these people go and make sure that remains that have become blown apart. This group came to all the kibbutzim on October 7th, and now they've brought in archaeologists, people who work even with the Dead Sea Scrolls, in order to sit and sift through the remains of that which was lit on fire with accelerant in order to destroy intentionally anything that could be identified. Why? Because Hamas knows that for Jews, burial is an element of its sacred relationship with Jewish tradition. Imagine that as 50 hostages, 40 of them children, are reunited. Some are children whose parents will remain in hostage. Some are children whose parents were massacred. This is part of the Hamas calculation of terror. They've achieved that goal.
Yeah.
When archaeologists are required to simply identify what I need to bury, why is America not remembering what that meant at 9/11? If you go into the memorial, it is a national cemetery. This was intended. So, ceasefire, problems of occupation, Nakba. I understand the discourse. And Israel and the Palestinians have to find a way to live together. Absolutely. But October 7th, and what has transpired, was calculated evil. And I can't emphasize that enough. We are dealing with a group whose purpose is to eliminate the Jewish state. I don't know how many among those that perished have still not been identified. There will be 50 people reunited. We don't know how many of the 240 have died. So the anti-Semitism, both on campuses and in public, is a part of a narrative that was also intended by Hamas. I am engaged in many different conversations with people I respect and engage, and they begin with a discourse of colonialism, destruction of Palestinian rights, a whole list. Rarely do we begin with Hamas. I think the anti-Semitism is not, as I understand it, new. It's now been opened and engaged in ways that not since the 30s in Germany have we seen. And by saying that in comparison, I am not suggesting we're moving toward a repetition of what the Nazis did.
I mean, certainly one parallel is you now have a captain of industry, not unlike Henry Ford, publicly dabbling in the worst forms of anti-Semitism.
I find Elon Musk, who is a generational genius, truly generational genius. I find it tragic that even if I permit him personally the margin of not individually being an anti-Semite, he chooses ways to facilitate anti-Semites. I don't know how we need to engage each other so that we can have conversations that permit us to discuss, to debate, to engage without diatribe and disputation, and hold each other accountable when the discourse shifts. What does it mean to be civil? I always use the basic example of the least I owe you is to talk to you and treat you as I would a stranger who's at the checkout counter of a supermarket.
Baseline.
Okay, now I understand. And I don't include moments and persons who are gatekeeping mechanisms, the TSA. No, that's far, it's stressful and it's a trigger mechanism. I need to find ways to discuss. I don't understand this destruction. Why are Jews doing this? Just a very interesting, simple moment. Oh, all Jews are doing this? All Jews are Israelis? But I think we're going to be in meals over Thanksgiving where people are going to misuse language.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
Zionists. Whoa, wait. There were people massacred on October 7th who were among the strongest peace activists in Israel. So, Netanyahu is not all Israel. His government is not all Israel. It is a very right-wing, non-representative government in 75 years of Israeli history. Okay? It happens. they passed with 3 negative votes an agreement that will cease armed conflict for 4 to 5 days. Okay, let's see what happens in getting these 50 for 150. It will be interesting how people engage in 3-to-1 ratio. And as we get closer to the nature of what Israel wants to exchange for actual uh, uh, military, we will get past the nature of 3-to-1, 5-to-1, 10-to-1. For one military man kept in Gaza 5 years, there were more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners given up.
Mm.
This was part of their calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about a 3-to-1, 5-to-1, 10-to-1 ratio? A lot of people have been talking about disproportional military devastation. Okay. How about exchange for children whose parents remain kidnapped? This is not the Palestinians, it is Hamas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I feel that America is a complex diversity that moves toward self respect. And as it understands self respect, I don't know why my screen does that. You'll have to teach that to me. As it moves toward self respect, it is more capable of respecting the other. I don't believe all Americans are anti Semites. I believe our contemporary discourse has yet to reject some anti Semitic myths that are easily available on the discourse table. There will be family gatherings during the next many days in which people say stupid, stupid things that they probably don't understand.
On the bright side, they have something to talk about other than Donald Trump.
Yeah, they'll talk about Biden being too old. They'll talk about Biden supporting Israel too much. Ergo, I won't support him. Talk about Dean Phillips, who's Jewish, attempting to push Biden in New Hampshire. There is going to be a lot of cross meanings, but we have to find a way, and this I am worried about, to stop somebody and say, Jews are not responsible for Gaza. Responded to a terror attack. Hamas is responsible for Gaza.
To what extent do you think it's because one of the things I hear is, um, well, what is Israel's plan? Um, is that even a fair expectation, given that so Israel was attacked brutally? Does there have to be a plan other than them wanting to destroy Hamas? is the expectation of some sort of prepackaged logistical plan. Is that an unrealistic expectation or an unfair expectation?
I don't know what unrealistic and unfair mean today. I wish I. People are caught up in two global armed conflicts. We have continued to try and figure out, is there an off ramp for Putin?
Hmm.
Is there a actual conscious understanding of how to get him to disengage? Is that unrealistic, unfair? Look, I don't even know if the word destroy, dismantle meets the standard of what can be completed. Last night, people were saying Israel needed time to be inside Gaza, and they could not agree to any ceasefire until they had a sense. I don't know what list they measured that sense by. The idea of Hamas won't be destroyed. People growing up in the horror of this area called the Gaza Strip will continue to create hatred. Israel's destruction of Gaza has done nothing about that.
Yeah.
So, who is going to control the nature of security if Israel is not going to occupy Gaza? That to me is the question. Will there be an outside multinational force? Okay. Do we do that with the UN? Do we do that with the Arab League? Do we make the PA? Okay. I don't want Israel occupying Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Who will control the issue of security once Israel has reached a plateau of knowing Hamas can no longer initiate conflict? This iteration of Hamas. So, yes, I think it's a reasonable question. When Hamas is dismantled, what comes next? And I think they are, whoever they are already asking questions about that. Blinken asking the PA, wondering if we can get Saudi Arabia and Jordan and Egypt. Okay, again, I'm a retired professor rabbi, outside my realm, way outside my realm. I I believe that ultimately we will end this and then have another period like we did 2014 to October 7, 2023, where another social, economic, militant iteration of Gaza will emerge. None of it matters if the questions between Palestine and Israel are not addressed. We must now create an honest public forum in which the Palestinian question is resolved. Nothing can get in the way of the Palestinian question now.
You said you're outside of your realm, but one of the things I've been thinking about these last few weeks talking with you is how, um, you know, a lot of Christians spiritualize their Christianity. But it doesn't appear that you as a Jew have the luxury to do that. That there is a very um, mundane, real world political component to what it means to being a Jew.
Um, yeah, not once in the 77 years of my life, the more than 50 years of my career, have I not been required to understand what it means to be a Jew outside in the streets. It is not something I'm permitted to experience inside a synagogue sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know, both for myself and my families, what it means to be a Jew engaged in a world in which we are so small and so vulnerable that we know how to answer questions. We know how to listen for words that are being used and abused that we will ultimately have to answer for. The interchange of Israelis and Jews. If I can just get 5 people who are listening to hear that, and then during Thanksgiving, they will say, whoa, 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 whoa. Did you hear what you just said? So I'm a Jew and I live in the 21st century. And not just because I'm a rabbi, but because I live after Auschwitz. I live connected to a modern nation state, Israel. I have terms that define my identity. One of them is Zionism, another is anti Semitism. So, my self awareness, Jason, forces me
Yeah.
to get past just my liturgy, just okay, I'm going to talk about my Bible and your Bible. And we are so far beyond kumbaya. Huge meeting of Jews in Washington, D.C., which the only clergy who spoke was John Hagee. This is it. This is the apogee of the American Jewish experience. Christians united for Israel.
I,
My
I
brain.
I didn't know about John Hagee, so I'm glad to hear that. I I only I only learned of the march after the fact, and I felt guilty because I would have gone had I known ahead of time. And I'm like,
Yes, you should
what?
have gone. And I'm sorry you didn't hear it. I should have mentioned it to you. I accept part of the responsibility not to make sure a new friend knows about it. But had you been there and had you, as a serious Christian, stood there and said, excuse me, who are you? And what are you representing?
I remember when I was in Israel last year. Uh, so we were at the Jordan River, and there were all these trees donated with little nameplates, and they're all Christian figures like John Hagee. I mean, it's crazy. It's 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 I do. I think too many Christians have a caricature of Judaism that's based on a lack of knowing any Jews, and I worry that too many Jews have an understanding of Christianity that is shaped by figures like him.
Da-da! The Jason and Joseph conversation. No, but what we're doing takes longer,
Mhm.
requires people to stop. Whoa, not all Jews are Israelis. Not all Israelis are Jews. 20% of those people living in Israel are Arabs,
Mhm.
Druze. So I don't blame you for Hagee. There are times when the quote, important mainline Protestant churches of America have disappointed me by letting Hagee create the loudest, most influential Christian narrative.
Fair. So, Joseph, I'm curious, or not curious, but I think it would be helpful. Um, Thinking about Christianity on the liturgical calendar, this coming Sunday is Christ the King Sunday, which, for those who understand Hebrew, that's kind of a redundant statement. But um, I don't know that enough Christians understand what sorts of hopes and dreams are named by that title, Messiah. Could you just unpack that for people?
Christos is Greek for Mashiach, which is Hebrew for anointed. So I began by talking about Jewish tradition that says when the eschaton occurs, at the end of time, and now we get at least 25 different interpretations. Will the Messiah precede the end of time? Will the end of time necessitate the Messiah? And none of it matters to me because, quote, it's the end of time. I'm not going to be here. My Christian brothers and sisters are engaged in a different narrative in which the Messiah, the anointed, the resurrected, came in order to beckon salvation, bring salvation that would then become eternal at the end of time. So you are personally saved through the event and promise of the Messiah, which you experience scripturally as Jesus of Nazareth, the Jew who was crucified, executed by the Romans. Now things get very confusing as different strains of the intertestamental history and scripture. We share a divine promise that history has a purpose.
Mm.
It's not hapless. It's not just because. And given what we wake up to every day, I need that sense of purpose that transcends my understanding.
And it's because people often, like it's characteristic of an attribute of Jewish faith and Jewish humor, right? Is to um, to accuse God of a poor job performance.
All
Um,
the time.
yeah, but I don't know that people understand that. Like behind that is that what makes Judaism and therefore Christianity different than like Eastern religions is that history is driven by an author with a capital A, and it does have this purpose, and it's not cyclical.
Nope.
Um, it's not a machine.
Nope. But there is mystery.
Yes.
And I may have stated this in one of our conversations. Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, a Hasidic master, once asked if anybody on any street corner could explain God to you,
Hmm.
would you really want that to be your God? Now, it is, and I apologize, disgustingly over intellectual, even elitist. Okay, yes. But it's very clear. I don't want the mystery, the purpose to be understood by anybody on any street corner. I need more.
Yeah.
So we share the not yetness. Yes, always, already, but, not yet. And when? Oh, please, not yours. What I can't stand about far too many Christian Zionists is they know when, they're helping push it, and they already have tickets to be there. Sorry, I need to simply be human, which inherently means, sorry, not for you, Joseph. For you to struggle, to understand, stop, go back, try and do it again better. That the Messiah will come again. Yes, I need that. But I need every day to be here to say thank you for what's now.
Yeah.
I am responsible. Joseph Edelheit is responsible for this part that I'm engaged in. So we have the same God. We share a scripture that begins in the Hebrew Bible and is developed in the Christian scripture. And we share the same pursuit of that which we don't understand. I cannot understand the evil that was calculated by Hamas. I cannot fathom what a human being, the hatred, the drugs. Don't give me a quick answer. I thought these were human beings with whom I shared. Okay.
So you started with Thanksgiving. What is the Thanksgiving tradition in Rabbi Joseph's house?
When I had a backyard and had a grill, I would grill my Thanksgiving turkey,
Okay.
not deep fry. No, grill a Thanksgiving turkey would take lots of time. Various opinions among my children about stuffing, how it's made. Okay, I give that over to someone else. I think it in my synagogue, Temple Israel, Minneapolis, there was a horrific accident a year and a half after I got there. A young man was killed in an auto accident, and the family, in his memory, gifted a Thanksgiving program where our youth group and parents came and created Thanksgiving food to be taken to those in need.
Huh.
So we would all come together. I
Huh.
would join the congregation after an interfaith Thanksgiving service in which I participated among the big downtown churches and the synagogue. Um, it's an opportunity to be in community, Jason. Um, Jews, um, until 1948, lived every place but their own homeland.
Yeah.
And so we participate in the communities in which we live. And those who live in the UK and France and American Jews that got there in 1654 when the first 23 Jews from Recife, Brazil, were running away from the Portuguese Inquisition.
Huh.
Those 23 Jews landed in New Amsterdam, and Peter Stuyvesant, the governor of New Amsterdam, wouldn't let them in. But among the 23 Jewish refugees were family who lived in Amsterdam and were stockholders in the Dutch West Indies Company. And the board of the Dutch West Indies Company told its governor, "You must let the Jews in." He did, with nothing. So the first Jews that came to North America were refugees running away from the Catholic Inquisition.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So what does Thanksgiving mean? It means to look back at history and be grateful. We had a rough moment of going from Brazil to New Amsterdam, weren't let in immediately, but eventually. We take history and its anguish and we weave it back into what motivates the future. That's what Thanksgiving has always meant. I'm a fifth generation native San Franciscan, and someplace in a box that no one can find, my grandmother had photos of the 1906 earthquake.
Huh.
Okay. And her grandfather had come from Prussia in 1848 after the failed Prussian Revolution and was engaged in gold. I don't know what that means. But here I am, and I've moved from San Francisco, Cincinnati, Chicago, Minneapolis, and now I'm in Rio de Janeiro. And I don't observe Turkey and Thanksgiving, but I am grateful. And the people who are listening to this podcast, I pray they too will have a moment of gratitude as they say grace for the meal they share. Please say thank you that we've stopped.
Yeah.
And some people will know freedom. Not everyone, but enough to renew our hope. And maybe that's what Thanksgiving is about. We have normalized a single day for what I think should be every day,
Yeah.
magnified it,
And that's a good summons, maybe, to not, um, I think of the Thanksgiving weekend is often a time when people tune out the news and what's going on in the world. And maybe that's a good reminder to not let the story of these hostages being set free, don't don't allow that to disappear from the the news cycle.
I just ask that people understand the humanitarian pause, the temporary ceasefire, comes not not to end Israelis military devastation, but to remind us that Hamas, initiated with slaughter and kidnapping, Palestinian people must have more, of which the state of Israel is responsible for its unique piece of pie. It is, as are Palestinian leaders,
Hmm.
as are Arab rulers. I just ask that we make sure we understand, how did we get here?
Yeah. Well, Joseph, I am grateful for you and this friendship, and uh, maybe it's hard to find a turkey in Brazil, but I hope you have a good Thanksgiving.
We will, and I hope you and your family and those you pastor experience a moment of a deep breath. Thank you.
And I'll see you next Wednesday,
Next Wednesday.
which is my birthday.
Wow. Next Wednesday is your birthday.
Mhm.
How old will you be?
46.
46. I'll do some gematria for you for next Wednesday.
Okay.